Welcome into another edition of the BlueWhite Tailgate Pawcast. Mike Gross of LNP, Frank Bonanni of the York Daily Record, alongside myself, Andrew Lissa. Great show ahead. Coach Joe Moorhead, the current head coach of the Akron Zips and former offensive coordinator of the Penn State Lions during their run to the Big Ten Championship in 2016, is our guest. We're really going to dive into that game and also Joe's 2 years of experience and some great stories later on in the show. Stick around for that. Guys, we got a loaded show for you. We're going to go quickly through Maryland, mainly because they're the Turtles. We didn't think they were going to show up. They showed up for about 3.5 minutes. Tip of the hat for them for being prepared in a cold Beaver Stadium on Saturday. And then we are going to get to Coach Moorhead and then talk Big Ten Championship football against quack again, Ducks. Guys, Beaver Stadium, nice and cold, but the Lions, they played hot. Coach James Franklin, he was hot after the game. A little frosty handshake and some fiery words for head coach of the Maryland Terps, Mike Locksley. Here's James Franklin.
You were trying to score. We're trying to score. On top of that, you're playing cover 0. If you don't want, play cover 2. So I'm good with it. And on top of that, there's also a change in college football. We are trying to play as long as we can, make the playoffs, and be seeded as high as possible. And scoring as many points and a point differential matters. All that matters. And if you don't get that, it's really not my problem. So, W, 1-0. I'm good with it. Anybody that's not, that's their problem.
Guys, any problem from you guys about what James Franklin had to say in that last touchdown scored by the Nittany Lions?
Well, I don't think it's that big a deal, but just from a sportsmanlike standpoint, I don't buy it, and I don't buy that argument that we just heard James make there. There's 4 seconds left in the game. 4 seconds, the clock is stopped. Snap the ball, take a knee, shake hands. They're on the 15-yard line. They had to throw it in the end zone. You're not cover 2. You're not reading the defense with 4 seconds left when you're up by 5 touchdowns. And the other thing is the idea that we got to score this late touchdown to make this final score look better. That's the old way of doing this. That's when the AP poll and the coaches poll decided everything, and you were trying to impress dozens of guys that weren't going to watch your game. Mm-hmm. I think he's the opposite of accurate on that. Again, I don't want to make a huge deal out of it, but I was almost more disappointed in James's argument than in the actual fact of the thing.
Right. As possible. That's why they beat them 51-15 last year. They score as many points, but yeah, I don't think it's a great look. Again, it's not a big deal, but it's not the way that I think I would want to handle business in that situation.
If you're on the 1-yard line and you take a knee, it's almost like you're like deliberately trying not to score. You're in the 15-yard line and you're throwing in the end zone. No.
I don't buy the explanation. I don't buy the explanation at all. Maybe a little bit with the one still being in the game and that struck a chord. Maybe. But I'll say this. Yeah, we're always reminded about James Franklin was the head coach in waiting at Maryland. And when Maryland came to Penn State in 2014, they did not shake hands. And if people don't forget that, I know
you're not wrong.
I know James Franklin hasn't forgotten.
Yeah.
And Penn State did not lose Maryland since 1961. And in James Franklin's first game, he lost to Maryland and they didn't shake hands at midfield. I think that all plays a part in it, and I have no problem. And I think Penn State Nation is actually backing James Franklin on this. And we go to the emails. C from Hoboken, again, apparently now he's a longtime listener, second-time emailer. Nice win by the team on Saturday. and growth season. Quick one for you guys. Coach Franklin has some strong words post-game. Yes, sir. I think he's always been consistent on this front, but it seems like he's starting to win over some of the legacy paternal whites as the season wears on, and I think his presser kicks that off. Any thoughts? He must be talking to me because I have the Wheaties box of Coach Paternal behind me, and so I must be a paternal white. But I don't see how those two things necessarily relate. I'll defend James Franklin on why, and I don't buy the reason that he gave us, but I'll defend him on why I believe that touchdown pass was thrown.
I mean, this is his team. We've seen it happen before, though, too. We've seen them score late touchdowns. I mean, Bo Prabula is basically what is he? He's the point spread maker, right? He's been doing this. How many times did he score a touchdown in the final 30 seconds and they suddenly cover the spread or they help themselves look better? I mean, I think he's fixated too on trying to give his team the best look, and I just don't agree with it. But it's the way I see it.
Yeah. I just think that the specific argument that he made, it's happened before, and he's made this argument before. I have a responsibility to put my reserves in the game. If I'm putting them in the game, they're going to play football. That argument is okay. I think that argument goes away a little bit when the clock is stopped with literally 4 seconds left in a blowout. I think that argument goes a little bit away. But the argument about the playoff and trying to impress the committee, that to me doesn't make any sense. That's the opposite of reality, in my view.
I don't even think James fully bought the argument when he goes, bottom line, W 1-0.
Yeah,
that was almost like, I don't care. I did think it was kind of that whole ending thing. It was almost like Penn State planted a flag in the Maryland defense and said, your defense is ours.
We're planting flags now.
Oh, my goodness.
What do you guys make of that? The flag planting. It's running rampant.
It's running rampant. If you're not the United States Marines, I don't think you need to be planting any flags.
No. Well, I mean, Penn State tried to do it at USC, and Franklin ran out there and.
That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah, he wasn't having any of that. That's interesting. Yeah.
Because you see it everywhere, and it's kind of ridiculous that in this one way that here's what have that reaction, but that they might. So to me, you gotta be aware that this could happen, and you gotta try to stop this if you're leading the team. So the idea of Ryan Day on camera just standing there watching people fight, this ridiculous. That's bad. But the case that you don't think that's when you start to see this, that something could happen and escalate, to me, you got to be out there. You obviously addressing this beforehand at some point in the year, right? Because this is going on everywhere. But trying to do something when it's starting,
I agree 100%. These college non-football coaches have a gazillion little details to think about. Well, this is one of them. It may sound silly, but it's really one of them.
Ryan Day was thinking of Lou Holtz, mooning him, saying, "I told you your team wasn't tough."
Yeah, those two. That's not a hat. Don't invite those two to the same party.
I would have loved to be at Thanksgiving dinner at Lou Holtz and Ryan Day. That would be a dream of mine. Absolutely. Hey, I think, these guys are getting paid now with NIL dollars. They go and flag plant or you fight. Now you're going to start getting fined. I mean, when revenue sharing comes, you're going to have some type of bargaining agreement. These guys are getting fined. You can't have a guy from North Carolina throwing a flag like a jack into the stands. Some of these actions are just ridiculous.
Well, that's going to be part of the new normal. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. That's going to be part of the new normal. Yep.
44-7. All of our predictions were right on.
Yeah.
I was upset. I said Maryland wasn't going to score, so I was wrong right off the bat. And I got another email, Joe and Conshohocken. So this one's going to be good from somebody in the Philly Birds. Andrew, your tweet about Penn State playing in the Big Ten championship game before the Maryland game even kicked off was reckless. you know better. Shouldn't be doing that. Do better. And Lending Pegwell also did it, and he deleted it. I stood by even when things were going bad for the Nittany Lions because I knew Maryland, the Turtles, will turtle up, basically roll over on their shell and everything else.
In what sense were you was he saying you're reckless? You're jinxing them? Is that what he was saying?
I guess. Because apparently my nice warm
it's not our
fingertips up
job
in the
to,
press
it's
box.
not our job to
Yeah.
jinx or try not to jinx anybody. That's come on.
Well, that's
Come on,
ridiculous. Maybe he thought you didn't understand like the tie-breaking system or something.
Well, based on his Twitter action with me, when I kept saying like, "Uh-oh, things aren't going well for the Nittany Lions early," I kept getting like Twitter responses like, "This is your fault," and like quote tweeting me saying Penn State was going to the Big Ten championship. The game was never in doubt. It was never in doubt.
Things didn't go right for about the first minute of the clock. That was about it, right?
Yeah.
Nittany Nation knows no bounds. When things are going bad, it's a tsunami. I had faith in James Franklin like Eisenhower had faith in Patton when he came command in Normandy. You knew there were going to be results, and James Franklin delivered. That's the way I look at it. Remember, if you want to have an email read here on the Blue White Tailgate Podcast, reach us at bluewhitetailgatepodcast@gmail.com. Really not much to talk about because you're pulling Maryland, a JV program here in the Big Ten. Lions roar for players of the game. Mike, who do you got?
Did I say Khalil Dinkins before? I think he's a pretty good player. I think if it wasn't for, and that this is a gargantuan if, of course, but if it wasn't for Tyler Warren, we would see. I think he's a good blocker. I think he's a pretty good receiver. I think there have been times when Drew Aller has missed him where he could have done more this year in the passing game. So, all of a sudden it's tight end you here a little bit, and I'm going to give you Khalil Dinkins for an unsung hero.
Well, I'm going to go with an important one here that goes beyond the Maryland game, and I'm going with Zane Durant, who was big again. The guy is playing his butt off every single week at like one of the highest levels that you've seen recently at defensive tackle. He doesn't even make the first 3 teams on the All Big Ten awards.
That was the one thing that jumped out to me looking at that. Yeah, that was the one thing. I agree. He made honorable mention.
That's the most ridiculous thing. I can't, like, what are these? And coaches, right? Coaches don't see this. They're sparking up back shields all the time. Unbelievable.
And another thing about that, not that the All Big Ten team is all that important, but they don't make the distinction between tackle and end. There's 12 defensive linemen that get first, second, or third team. Well, and he wasn't one of the 12? God.
Anyway.
If there's 5 D tackles better than him in the Big Ten, I haven't seen him. And that's a shame that he's left off that. And I think it matters because it's something for a kid to say, hey, I'm all Big Ten, at least later on, in their life. It might not seem like a big deal now, but I think later on you want to be able to say, I'm all Big Ten. Player of the game, I'm giving to Nick Singleton just on what I saw from him in multiple aspects of the game. As Steve Jones said on this show, just what he does with his hands. He seems, Frank, you've written out, seems he's had that burst back. Seemed really, really happy in the post-game media scrums. I also want to give a Lions roar out to James Franklin just for having his team prepared, coming out, taking care of business, in this game. And that's why they have this opportunity ahead of them this week. Unsung hero for me, Nick Dawkins. Great job along the offensive line, just blowing holes open. Never seemed to have a bad, communication up there either. And with all the stuff that Andy Koldenicki's done, I think a lot of that is a credit to Nick Dawkins. No bad snaps. Knock on wood. No bad snaps. After the game, the players fired up. They're going to the Big Ten championship game. Talk to Drew Aller, talk to Jalen Reed. Jalen, I asked, hey, you excited to be playing in the Dome? And I asked Drew Aller about why their excellence, and Frank, you were there for that. It was a continuation on your line of questioning on why they would take care of things on little teams because it's difficult to win 10, 11 games. There are Jalen Reed and Drew out.
the game, so I couldn't really watch it. I just saw it. I think it was in the locker room, and I saw the final score. No, I think it was like 40 seconds left when it was like 13-10. Michigan just kicked the field goal. I watched like the last drive, and that's all I saw. Now, okay, you gotta go out and handle business.
Yeah, I think it's reflecting on the film really, because the film never lies. You know, statistics at times lie, but the film never lies. And I think, you know, what we've been putting on tape in the last couple of weeks has been consistency. But, you know, I think there's areas to improve on in terms of consistency throughout the last 2 weeks, specifically on offense. Just, you know, staying ahead of the sticks more, converting more third downs.
Spoken like a true quarterback. Guys, your reaction to what Drew Aller said, and that was it, going off of Frank's line of questioning about getting better each and every single week, was one of Drew's answers to Frank's question.
I think he's an example of that, getting better in small ways each and every week. And now he really gets the national spotlight in a sense to me, because he's not just the Big Ten championship game, but he's going against Oregon and Dylan Gabriel. I mean, you know, arguably the best quarterback maybe in the country. I mean, it's going to be a game of quarterbacks look that way a lot. And I think Drew's got a lot to prove. And I'm interested to see how he kind of takes his line of thinking there and how he performs, really. Biggest moments for him coming up.
What Drew Aller should want for Christmas is a healthy Harrison Wallace, because I think that will be I think that will have a big impact on this game potentially, because I think he's by far their best receiver, and they need. I mean, I'm tired of hearing myself say this, but they need to stretch the field to the wide receivers, and that's the guy that they are most likely to do that with. The other thing that was a Christmas present for Drew Aller in the offense was that it looks like Singleton is 100% physically now. He looks or very close to it. He looks really explosive and fast, and he looks like the superhero-ish athlete that he is when he's healthy.
You're really right on that, Mike, as far as Trey Wallace, because with Nick back, that's huge, because him playing the way he did in the middle of the season, he's just a decent running back. Him healthy, he's a game breaker. Yeah. And at this point in the year, you need that. And Trey Wallace is, I think he's definitely better than what people give him credit for. I mean, he is the closest thing they have to a difference maker. And you're absolutely right. I mean, his input to this offense at this point in the year is darn near necessary. I mean, so I don't know if they can survive games like they got coming Saturday if you don't have him, because I'm not sure you have anybody on the outside that, I mean, that's the difference between Oregon and Penn State. They're pretty similar in a lot of ways, except that Oregon can throw the ball down the field. Yeah. And Penn State kind of can a little, you know, but they need Trey Wallace.
No better time to have a breakout game and step up than in a nationally televised game against the number one team in the country. Oregon, 3.5-point favorite. All of Penn State Nation is thinking the heavens above that this game is on CBS with Brad Nessler instead of on Fox. That's all I'm going to say on that. But I also know what everybody at Penn State is thinking. Let's talk a little bit about a 2016 Big Ten championship team. We had a little bit of pep in our step when we started this edition of the BlueWhite Tailgate Pawcast, and our guest is finally here. We're done talking about Maryland. We're not talking about the past. We're talking Big Ten championship game, and one man who knows what it's like to coach in one of those games, former Penn State Offensive Coordinator and current head coach of the Akron Zips, Coach Joe Moorhead. Coach Joe Mo, thanks for being here. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely, fellas. Appreciate you having me on.
First off, congratulations on the big rivalry win over Toledo this past week. Looking at the Nittany Lions a little bit, going into the Big Ten championship game against Oregon. Take us through your preparation back in 2016.
Yeah, I mean, we knew it was going to be a heck of a challenge, at least from an offensive standpoint. They were one of the top scoring defenses in the country, I think, giving up around 14 to 17. And James is always a master motivator, so I head into my office on the first day of game planning. I think it was either that Sunday or Monday, and someone had slipped onto my chair and highlighted a couple of sentences in an article that said that Penn State would be lucky to score 14 to 17 in the game. So not that I need much motivation to begin with, but that added a little extra pep in my step. And I think, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure it was James that did it. And kind of the week started from there.
You know, it just dawned on me that you have been the offensive coordinator for both of these teams in this game, right?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
I just thought of that.
We thought of your system, Joe, when you were at Penn State. We thought of it as really interesting and kind of creative. And we have a guy here now whose system is much different than yours, but also interesting and pretty creative. So what do you think of the Kodalnicki approach as a coordinator?
You know, I've not seen a ton of footage from this year. We did have them in the Bowling Green breakdown, but I've known of Coach for a long time, really since his years at Buffalo, and kind of in a kind of passive way followed his progress, and obviously the things he did at Kansas were incredibly impressive, and now he's brought that to State College, and like I said, there's a million ways to skin a cat. Put points on the board in terms of systems and philosophies and things like that. But Coach has done, it appears he's done a phenomenal job this year, putting guys in position to be successful and maximizing their strengths and minimizing some of the things that guys may not do too well.
Hey, Joe, Frank Perdani, it's great to hear your voice and see you, and we miss working with you. But great to
see you too.
Yeah, great to talk with you. You mentioned about how James is a master motivator. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because we don't always get a view of James Franklin from another coach, so to speak. What?
Yeah. I mean, he's a very observant. He's very observant in terms of human reactions and knowing what's going to, and good and bad, knowing when somebody's high or know when somebody's low and what to do to keep them high or what to do to pick them up. And then certainly, what buttons to press to get people motivated. And obviously me being a fairly competitive person and having an article that said that, someone was going to hold us, under 20 points, he knew that was the right button to press with me.
What was the hardest he ever hit you on the sidelines in celebration from one of the?
It had to have been. I mean, if you guys are reflected, it had to be that Rose Bowl one. I mean, that was a good solid right to the middle chest area and knocked me back a little bit there. But generally, those were in response to positive plays, so it made the pain worthwhile.
Okay.
Coach, your offense had some pretty good weapons to utilize. Mike Gesicki on the outside, and we had Trace McSorley on earlier this season, and we talked if he had to pick one, Mike Gesicki or Tyler Warren. Of course, he went with his guy. But, Tyler Warren has been able to do some things. He's getting a lot of national hype for a lot of awards. People think he should be in New York for the Heisman Trophy. If you had a tight end like Tyler Warren, completely different skill set from Mike Gesicki, how would you look to utilize him?
Yeah, I mean, the little bit that I've seen on him is he blocks like a lineman, he runs routes like a receiver, and catches. I mean, everything that's in sight. And I think I've seen him line up a quarterback and kind of run the wildcat, and line up a running back, throw the ball, catch the ball. I mean, the guy's like a Swiss Army knife. He does a little bit of everything. So obviously it's great for Coach Franklin, Coach Kodalnicki to have a weapon like that at their disposal, and certainly they're using him in a lot of different ways to move the football and score points.
Joe, what I'm interested in the many different places that you've been in your career, and now to be in the MAC in this environment with the transfer portal and NIL and all that stuff, and we talk all the time about coaches have to recruit their players after they're already there. I would imagine that's might even be particularly true at the Akron level, where if a kid is really successful, he thinks, I want to go up. I want to go to the Power Four or whatever. How are you finding this sort of new normal in the sport?
Yeah, I mean, I say difficult. I mean, it's it's you just have to adapt and make the best of the situation. And we're going through postseason player exit meetings right now, and we've had some guys that have had very good seasons who are having opportunities to move up. And I don't, and unfortunately, we're I think the only team in our conference that doesn't have a penny of NIL for either recruitment or retention. So that makes it even more difficult. And not that we would be able to pay the type of money even if we had an NIL to keep these guys. But here's the thing I say. I provide the guys with my honest opinion. If they come in and it's a lateral move and it's going to do something to disrupt their production for them to reach their ultimate goal, which is to get to the NFL, I tell them it's a bad idea. If it's something where they can, go play at a Power 4 school, put some money in their pocket that can change their life or their family's lives, and be assured that they're not going to lose any, playing time or productivity, then I'll tell them it's a good idea. And I don't think I'm the person. I know I'm not the type of person, because I wouldn't want this done to one of my children, to try to guilt a kid or give him false reasons to stay when leaving is a better opportunity for him and his family. So, it's happening to us right now, and kids are getting opportunities at bigger schools for money. And if I think that's the right idea for them, even though it may not be the best thing for our program, then I tell them it's the best thing for them to do, because it's the truth.
Penn State hasn't been to the Big Ten championship game since you were there. It's 8 years already. But
God,
I know they're back. What can you go back? I mean, that's an iconic game to people still to this day, obviously. What was the key to what you guys were able to do to turn that game around when you look back on it now? In the middle of the game, it's such an important game, right? How are you? When you look back on it, what was the key to that, to taking that environment and that moment and switching the whole moment?
Yeah, I think a lot of it centers around the culture that Coach Franklin built with the program, that our kids had a very keen understanding of what it meant to react to prosperity and how to respond to adversity. And we had been in those points at certain times throughout the course of the season. And quite frankly, in those first 25 minutes, if there was something that could go wrong in a football game in any of the three phases, it did. And it wasn't just an ass kicking, it was a royal ass kicking. And, to me, the tide of the game really turned when it was 28-7 with roughly 2 minutes left.
Yeah.
And I can't place the ball. I mean, it was somewhere between the 20 or 25. And I turned to James and asked him, hey, do we just want to run it and get to halftime? And he said, no, let's go try to score. And we mounted a drive. We threw the comeback to Saeed on the left sideline, and the kid tried to jump it, and we scored to make it 28-14. And I think that score heading into halftime was critical, because now it's a 2-touchdown game with momentum, as opposed to that 28-7. I know it's only 7 points, but that's a big difference, particularly with momentum.
Yeah, it felt like, I remember talking to guys in the press box, and it felt like you guys were going to find a way to win that game after that score. That really was the thing that turned it, in my memory, anyway. Yeah.
Coach, everything you just said about, being down in that game out in Indy and Lucas Oil and the comeback, it takes me back to the game against Pitt. A lot of players were walking off that field dejected. The freshmen that were busting that morning, they were all quiet. So members of the coaching staff were quiet. And I remember I was walking next to you, and you're just saying to the freshmen, come on, get up, get these guys going. And you're saying to the offense coming back off that field, as some of them are dejected, guys, that's the way to battle all game. That's the way to battle all game. I mean, that was kind of the mantra of that whole 2016 team. And, you said James is a master motivator, but I was like ready to, if I was a player for you, I was ready to run through a wall in Heinz Field just listening to you come off that, coming off. How did you, bond with that team, and how did they take your philosophy and just trust you absolutely going through that whole season, being that it was your first year?
Yeah, I mean, they took to me right away, and I think a lot of it, and you've heard, I think, Trace and Billy Fessler talk about, quite frankly, the very first meeting I had with the offense when I was hired, and, kind of the messaging that, Penn State had traditionally been known for playing great defense, being sound on special teams, and the offense not screwing it up. And I said that was no longer going to be the case. And ironically enough, the term I used was we're going to be the Oregon of the East Coast. I guess that's even more so ironic now. Yeah. And just, challenge those guys that, hey, we're now going to be a team that wins the game because of the offense instead of a team that wins the game in spite of the offense. Now, it wasn't necessarily clean, through those first 4 games, including the first half of Minnesota. But once Saquon scored that touchdown, then we kind of got our footing and confidence breeds confidence. And, I think the kids, their attitude reflects leadership, and it starts from the top with James. And I think hopefully one of the things I've been really good at throughout the course of my 28-year career is instilling confidence in the coaches and players for whom I'm responsible. And I think when you added our scheme to the talent and then the cohesiveness and chemistry of that offense, and then as it related to the entire team with Coach Cry and Charles on special teams and the rest of that staff, there's very few magical years. And I know that sounds corny, but as that year went on after the Minnesota game, it's like, man, I'm not sure we're going to lose another game.
Almost finished.
Yeah, you shouldn't have lost another game, right? But what do you think, Joe, that you took from your time at Penn State as a coach when you go forward now, since you've done different things, obviously, since you left Penn State? But what do you think you've taken from that experience the most in your career?
You take a little bit of something, everywhere you go. And, the lessons that you learn from working for a head coach like James, you carry those things on. Certainly the assistant coaches who are on that staff. That's really quite a tree for guys who have gone on and had a ton of success. And then you look at the players we coached, guys who had incredible college careers, and many of whom have gone on to be, high level, pro players. It was just a 2-year run where, you look back on it and, you don't know it. You don't know it at the time, but with the, the benefit of time and hindsight, you're like, man, I don't know that it gets more special than those 2 years that we had at Penn State.
Joe, has the game changed from a sort of offensive standpoint, a scheme standpoint? Has the game changed since then? Is it less of a pure spread thing? In any way, has the priorities and just the way offense is played state of the art in the sport, has it changed in, let's say, the last 8 years?
I think it's changed in the sense that more offenses in college, and really as you usually talk about a trickle-down effect, I think of it as a trickle-up effect, that back in 2016 and 17, there were a number of teams who were running systems similar to ours, but it kind of wasn't, completely commonplace. And now you look around the country and see, all right, how many teams are majoring in 11 personnel shotgun RPO schemes, spreading the field out horizontally and vertically, making the quarterback a vital part of the run game and, pushing the ball down the field. I think that's more at the college and pro level, at least at the pro level, for people who are scoring a bunch of points and winning games. I think it's you're seeing more of that than you are less of it. At least that's my observation.
Joe, do you miss being a sports writer?
Do I miss it? Yeah, you're always right when you have the pen in your hand last. So it's yeah, I do miss that. You can't be wrong.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Coach, I want to ask you out one particular call from the Big Ten Championship game. It's the wheel route to Saquon Barkley. And you said sports writers are always right. Well, pregame, I said Penn State's going to win the game on a route to Saquon Barkley. So I did. It's on tape at my previous institution, to quote Coach Franklin from his early days at Penn State.
Sorry.
And I called it. And I was proud as a peacock sitting in the press box when that happened. So take me into that play call for the wheel route to Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, there have been a lot of versions of people who've talked on this play. and I guess it's kind of like a tall tale. It gets, it's like a fine line. It gets better with age, and there's always, a couple of variations of it. But the truth of the matter is, at that spot on the field, that particular play that was called was not in the game plan, but it was a play that we run in our system. And I think one of the most positive aspects about our offense is something I like to refer to as banked repetitions, meaning there's a play that we could call throughout the course of a game that we haven't maybe practiced that week, but we've run it so many times throughout the course of the season and spring ball and fall camp that you call it and the kids don't bat an eye. So we got into that situation. We were in 3-by-1 detached, right hash, field left, and I saw that they were in man-free coverage. And I felt like we had a one-on-one matchup with Saquon on the will linebacker. So the play was trips left, Dover wheel. And you had Chris was on a 16-yard dig route. Michael was on field 3. He was on a 12-yard corner. Deshaun was field 2. He was on a 6-yard crosser. Saeed was field 1. He had a hitch. And then you run that play, and if you don't tag the wheel, Saquon just runs a check down. But when you tag wheel, he runs a wheel. So the whole point of it is, long story short, I thought we were going to have him man-to-man on the will. They blitzed the will, and it got even better, which meant the defensive end had him man-to-man. So I can't say I was forward-thinking enough to know that that was going to happen, but I did know someone was going to have a man-to-man. They blitzed the will. We were in a 5-man protection. Chaz Reich stepped down, blocked the will. In the end, actually ended up coming free, but he was late. And if you watch the clip, Trace kind of faded a little bit back to avoid taking the sting of the hit off him. And I don't know if it was Watt or Beigel or Beisel. I can't remember the guy's name, but it was one-on-one on one of the ends. And Trace really threw it, and the only place it could go kind of in that back right corner of the end zone. And that is the play was not in the game plan. I called it. No one batted an eye, and they ran it. And fortunately, the coverage that I thought they were going to play, they played.
You were the sports. You had the last call, and you were always right.
Yeah, yes, it was awesome. I had to harken back to that's what I channeled. I channeled my inner sports writer for that play.
Yeah, I don't think any sports writer could have provided quite the detail that you did there on that one.
I was feeling that. I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse because you remember the bad ones too, but I do have a pretty specific memory to a lot, and my we'll be in the film room watching cut-ups and preparing for a game, and we'll install a play that I haven't run since running a place like, and I'll be like, all right, yeah, pull up the 2016 Penn State cut-ups. It'll be Michigan State. Ball be on the left hash. It'll be between the 30 and 35-yard line. And the young coaches in the room will pull it up, and they'll be like, holy shit. Or they'll be amazed at the level of recall that a lot of times it's exactly right. So I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse because it goes for the good plays as well as the bad plays.
Yes. But did you predict that wheel route was going to be a touchdown?
No, I called a bunch of plays that year that I said were going to be touchdowns. That I had a feeling, but that was not one that I called off the sideline and said it was going to be a touchdown. I wish it were. It made the story a heck of a lot cooler.
Yeah, it's a better story, but we'll take it. That was funny. Frank, are you with us?
Of an athlete was Saquon. Out of all the players you coached, Joe, where does he stand?
I mean, the best. And really, on top of the size, the speed, the strength, the athleticism, the ability to make people miss, the ability to run by people, pass, protect, catch the ball. He was a guy who more often than he wanted to know what he was doing wrong more than be told what he was doing right. And was a guy that was kind of obsessed with the details of what can I do to be better. And I think that's a trademark quality of a lot of the elite players in the world is they're not focused as much on the things that they're doing well. They want to know the things that they haven't done, they don't do well. And I think that's him, that he was always looking for a way to improve his game mentally or physically. And you add that on top of, world-class, skill. And then you get the guy like Saquon Barkley.
Did he ever do a backwards leap when he was at Penn State?
Like the one he did on this just recently? No, I think we saw a couple of those forward ones. I remember the one against Iowa up there in 2017 where we a leap and a bounce off of.
Yeah.
But even in practice, I didn't. I mean, the most amazing thing is the one I think that kind of pops up on the internet during every fall camp where we were in that drill that coach called Lions Den, and it was kind of a 3-on-3, and we handed it off, and I think all three linemen fell down, and then he proceeded to make all four defenders miss. I think that may have been even more impressive than the backward leap, but I'd have to call that a 1A and a 1B.
That was the precursor to the USC Rose Bowl run.
Oh, yeah. Left hash minus 40-yard line, 2x2. Yep.
Not Coach. The last one for me I got is, if you were in the locker room, you've been through the Big Ten championship game, a game where you guys were kind of an underdog. Tom Allen has a lot to prove, being the defensive coordinator, coming over as the head coach of Indiana. Andy Konicki, he has a lot to prove. It's his first time being there. James is obviously going to give them some advice. What advice would you give the Penn State, being that you've already been through one? And not only did you go through one, you went through one that, as you said, was a complete disaster in the first half, where everything that could go wrong did go wrong.
Oh, it sure did. Well, first off, I do have love for my Oregon family, too. I mean, 2 years there under Coach Cristobal, and, we won we won the Pac-12 title the first year and made it the second year and got our butts kicked by Utah. But so I do have love for my Oregon people out there, too. So I wish them the best of luck. But what I would say to those guys is kind of what the saying was for our offense in the 2016 season heading into 17. And that is, and Trace can tell you, I'll give you the acronym. I won't provide the colorful language, what it says. The initials are LTFF, and it means let it fly. And I would go into it. I know they'll both have great game plans, but, they're saying scared money don't make money. So trust your plan, have a great week of preparation. And James always says, call it aggressively. So I would say let it fly, tee it high, let it fly. And, don't leave it on the call sheet because you don't get it back.
I like it. I'm good. That's great. That's great. I appreciate having you, Jack.
Awesome. Michigan, really appreciate it.
Thanks, Coach. Always love to catch up with Joe Mo. Really appreciate him giving us the time. Guys, this is a chance to change a bunch of narratives for Penn State and around the program. James Franklin, 10-year head coach, just one win against a top 5 team. Now you're going against the number 1 team. Team's pretty evenly matched. You guys already touched on it a little bit. I mean, you got to feel that, or do you guys feel that maybe Penn State feels, hey, this is just our chance to go out and prove who we are? We've talked about identity ad nauseum on this show. Just go out, do what we do, and things will take care of themselves against Oregon.
No, I was going to say, this is the most unexpected big chance proving moment possible for Penn State.
That's what's weird about it. You didn't see it coming.
No, and I don't think the players could have. I mean, but it's so, how do you embrace it? It is a strange situation, but it's, they failed in a sense in their first big moment, because Ohio State by far was their biggest game. And that didn't go the way they wanted it all. And they kind of seemed like they vowed and put their foot down and said, we're going to get better. Well, here you go. You get a second chance, right? I mean, it's not like this is the end of the season, but I think it is a huge proving point. Like, how good are they? I mean, you can beat all the teams like we've talked about here. You beat all the teams you're supposed to, and hats off to them, because most teams can't do it. But now this is a different level. This is a step, and, we know it's hard, but hey, you got a chance. I want to see what these guys make of it.
Yeah, you can't really. That's exactly what I think. What Frank just said. I think it's kind of a weird situation to be in, but I'm not sure how good they are. They don't have an elite win. This is an opportunity to get one. And you certainly can't be thinking in terms of the worst case scenario if you're Penn State. But if they were to get blown out in this game, it could hurt them for the playoff. I mean, I think they're in the playoff no matter what happens. And I think their defense is too good for them to really get blown out. I don't think they're going to get blown out in this game, but it's possible that their seeding could be impacted either way. And obviously, if they win the game, they're going to be the 1 or 2 seed in the whole thing. right?
Absolutely.
You guys,
That's
you guys talk about seizing the moment and although the defense too good to get blown out. So the last time Penn State played Oregon was the 1995 Rose Bowl on January 2nd. You guys, perfect segue into our 1994 Nittany Lion flash. To the Rose Bowl we go. Tie out 14-all against the Ducks in the third quarter. Oregon kicks off. Here is Keith Jackson and Bob Greasy.
Ambrose Fletcher at the 7. That's fresh legs. Finally got him.
Those
At
fresh
the
legs.
21-yard line.
His fresh legs wore out, didn't they?
Ambrose Fletcher, a blast from the pass. That leads to a Carter touchdown run to make it 21-14 Lions. And then the player of the game to put this one on ice from Penn State safety Chuck Penzenik. Keith with the call.
First down for the Ducks now, up at the 40. Neal's over 300 yards. Look out, Willie Smith's coming. Pass down the middle. That'll be picked off. Bad pass. And Nittany Lions are cooking. It is Chuck Penzenik who made his first start in this ball game. This is his second interception. He runs it all the way back to the 13-yard line.
How about those blasts from the pass? We couldn't go with Kajana Carter's run to start the game. We already flashed that one back earlier in the season. We contrast that with memories with Trace McSorley to Mike Gesicki, Saeed Blacknell, and of course, we already touched on that wheel route to Saquon Barkley. Always cool to flash back to some cool memories, whether it's the 1995 Rose Bowl or the 2016 Big Ten championship game. Guys, Oregon, the lone undefeated team in the country, you got to think they're beatable. ESPN Football Power Index has Penn State actually favored in this game, 53.8%. And I think it's based on common opponents. Wisconsin is a good comparison. So too is Illinois. Wisconsin, 28-13 for Penn State. 16-13 for Oregon, Illinois 21-7 for Penn State, 38-9 for Oregon. The average scores across the 7 common games between the two schools: Penn State 31-10, Oregon 35-15. The average win margin for Penn State 21, average win margin for Oregon plus 19. Penn State the number 4 defense, Oregon the number 7, and Penn State's offense 19th, Oregon the 15th. Maybe that's why James added that last touchdown, get that point differential off. For the staff.
absolutely. It's a pretty close matchup statistically. To me, it's just Oregon just looks better. You know, I don't know. I guess because the way Penn State wins, right? I mean, Penn State they're they find answers. It just doesn't always look really good. They don't usually dominate necessarily teams from start to finish. They're a little like Joe Mo's team in the sense that do they start slow sometimes. But I think it's the way they go about winning, and maybe that's fooled us, or maybe it hasn't. I don't know. I mean, to me, it's Penn State's defense has been really good, but what do they do against this offense? That's what I'm interested in.
Yeah, I think I really like Dylan Gabriel. I think he's an excellent college player. He's very good at extending the play and throwing on the run, moving the pocket. So he would seem to be a pretty good. I'm thinking of the word antidote, but that's not the right word. That's too strong. But he might be a pretty good answer for Penn State's excellent defensive ends and their pass rush and all that. So I don't know. And I also if you're Penn State, I think you're a little bit concerned about the O-line on the other side of the ball because they are a little beat up right now. So those are the things that I sort of look at.
Yeah, Dylan Gabriel has only thrown 6 interceptions, and I think all of them are in the red zone. Those streams are enough. So that maybe there is a chink in the armor. So
maybe they've had an odd season in that, their first couple games. I mean, they were really fortunate to beat Boise State. Go back and look at that game and the highlights and the box score. they were really fortunate to get out of that game with a win. Boise outgained them, outrushed them by more than 2-1. And the week before that, Idaho, the freaking Vandals gave them a pretty good game. And in those two games, Dylan Gabriel was terrific. They got excellent quarterback play in those two games and still kind of struggled a little bit. And then they started rolling. Then they played Oregon State, which is a rival for them and a decent team, and really smacked them around. And then they started rolling, although they really did struggle with Wisconsin just a couple weeks ago at Camp Randall. So it hasn't been seamless for them, but it's been pretty good. It's been pretty good.
Yeah, that game against Wisconsin was shocking to watch.
You know what? They were in a tough spot, though. Oregon had played like 8 games in a row or something crazy. I think they were just finally a little worn out, and they just had to survive in a somewhat similar way that Penn State. That was going to be rough at Minnesota. They just had to survive somehow. I guess both their credits they did. So, yes.
Yeah, I think that's on the money. Yep.
Frank, with the running game that Oregon brings to the table, Jordan James and Noah Whittington, you already highlighted Zane Durant and how important the interior of the line is going to be with Dylan Gabriel, and as Mike had his ability to extend plays and get involved that way. I mean, he's thrown for over 3,000 yards already. For me, on the Penn State defensive side, I kind of look at Deni Dennis Sutton as a guy we don't talk about that is going to have an overly large possibly impact on this game for the Penn State defense, because everybody's going to be talking about Abdul Carter and him to do what you expect to do, but he's going to be able to do it alone. And I think for Penn State to come out victorious, Dennis Sutton and the other defensive end spot has to be big with constant pressures for Penn State to come out on. Am I wrong in saying this?
No, not at all. And I think it's a little like Trey Wallace on the other side. People know of them, but I don't know if they really understand maybe the impact that these two guys can have. Because to me, Deni Dennis Sutton, I thought he might be an All-American candidate this year. I mean, he's got all of the physical skills. And it's a shame, he got hurt. And I think maybe like Singleton, I guess hopefully for Penn State fans, that he's finally kind of close to 100%, because if he is, what a time for him to finally find himself, so to speak, because I think there's a lot left there that he has not been able to maybe do, at least in the stat sheet, and then maybe big impact plays. And I mean, he's got to do that. I mean, you're at the point now where you need more than Abdul Carter rushing the passer in these games, right? You need Deni Dennis. You do need him, and really, obviously, you need big games, steady games from Kobe King, but also, I mean, Tony Rojas. Hey, we've heard a lot about you. Let's, have it some big plays. I think the kid has it. I think this is the time for that too.
In the last couple of weeks, it's been obvious how much opponents are dialed in on double teaming Abdul Carter or finding him and dealing with him. So obviously that opens up an opportunity. You can't block everybody, and that opens up a great opportunity for, other good players on their defensive line. And Deni Dennis Sutton would be, probably exhibit A of that.
Yeah, he is one. And, in that Minnesota game, I don't think he was as healthy maybe as he is now, because he missed a big tackle in the backfield, for example. And I'm watching the play and I'm thinking, is that really, how close to being healthy is he? Because it just seemed like a play that he shouldn't have missed, so.
It almost feels like maybe he's the equivalent of Singleton on the defensive side. Like maybe he's back, and if he is, that's big.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right, we get into predictions here. Who wants to go first? I have no problem going first if you guys want to do it, but I'm feeling pretty confident on the lines. What do you guys got?
Oh gosh, I love it. Go ahead, Michael.
I like Oregon. Penn State. I'm still not. We've talked about it. We've talked about it a lot. I'm not quite sure how good they are. I've got it 30-20, Oregon.
Okay. So I'm going. This is the first time all season I picked against Penn State, and it's nothing against them. I think this game, this isn't the end of the season, but I think they have a lot to prove on who they are and where they're going. And I don't know if they even need to win the game to do that. So I think they keep it close. I just think, or to me, until proven otherwise, Oregon's a step ahead on both sides of the ball. I'm going 27-20. Oregon. Penn State keeps it close.
Similar.
All right, I got 27 as the common score with you, but I don't know if it's too much coffee I was drinking at work today. I'm riding Penn State, 27-24. I've had them 11-1 to go this year. I didn't think 11-1 would be in the Big Ten championship when I was actually going through it. I figured Penn State would lose out on a tiebreaker, but somehow they are here, and I'm just going to ride with them. 27-24. Difference makers I have in my note that I've done is Sutton, Trey Wallace, and Tony Rojas has to play his best game of the season.
Great minds. Great minds.
Maybe it's that interception against Maryland. I know they're not on the same planet, but I think James Franklin is going to have the guys ready, go in there with a solid plan. And I think Penn State having something to prove and a little bit of chip on their shoulder is going to be the difference maker for the blue and white. As we talk about the college football playoff, this game doesn't really matter that much in terms of who's making the playoffs, but it does matter a lot for possible seedings. In the rankings that just came out earlier tonight, they're number 5. And you have to think like, wow, number 5, Arizona State at home. It's pretty warm out there in Phoenix. Not sure how I would handle December back in Happy Valley. And then you would have Boise State in a bowl game, 5-4 matchup. Kind of a little better draw than your number 1 team with the way the bracket is set for tonight. But we know that's all going to change. What are your guys' thoughts real quick on the college football playoff?
Well, it could change, but it might not change tremendously. And as looking at this bracket and looking at this format, the way this is set up, that number 5 spot is a pretty good spot. I thought all along that was a good place to be. And it's conceivable that that's where Penn State could be. You beat Arizona State and Boise State. Is that right? And they'd be in the national semis. It's not too bad. It might not end up that way. We'll see. But that's this whole thing has worked out, I think, in Penn State's favor, generally speaking.
Yeah, and I don't think they're going to get penalized very much for losing to Oregon necessarily because in a way, why should you? If they're playing the number 1 team in the country and Notre Dame's sitting at home watching, doesn't Penn State deserve something for playing this game, right? Win or lose. So the thing is, to me, it'll be interesting then only in that Penn State's getting a home playoff game to me, no matter what happens, right? But there is a difference, like you just pointed out, between having the 5th seed and say the 7th seed. Yep. So will they push Notre Dame ahead of Penn State if Penn State loses? I don't know. We'll talk and debate all this because this is great, and maybe it won't matter who they play.
Well, they talked to the guy who's the chairman when they announced it tonight, which they always do, and Reese Davis of ESPN tried to get him to say exactly what Frank just alluded to, and he kind of said, well, our assessment of the teams that are not playing this weekend is not going to change. But that doesn't really make sense because, what if Penn State loses 65-0 on Saturday? Well, then your assessment of Penn State might change relative to the teams that aren't playing this weekend. So it does change. I mean, I don't think they're going to lose 65-0, obviously, but you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, you still got to show up and you got to play well. You can't just mail it in. But
yeah,
I think that's the only thing. You
how
play.
The game goes matters. But they're not. They're in pretty good shape, and I think this whole thing has played out pretty well for them.
I agree.
I thought Ward Manuel would have had a Michigan flag behind him, maybe planting it at the college football playoff headquarters. I was disappointed in that. Planted our flag. We're planting our flag on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, Apple, wherever you get your podcast. that does it for this edition of the Blue-White Tailgate Podcast. See ya after the Big Ten Championship game. Penn State going for the first Big Ten title since 2016. It's going to be a good one. 8 o'clock, CBS. Brad Nessler, Gary Danielson on call. We'll have a complete recap. If you're going, be safe. St. Elmo Steakhouse. Have a good one. Bye-bye.